Part 11 of Wounded Knee 1973 from freedomarchives.org, The American Revolution. All oppressed nations inside the U.S. have the right to self-determination. The Oglala Sioux Nation is the first nation in U.S. history to declare its territory liberated from the U.S. control and independently self-governing. For decades, we have witnessed people struggling for basic human rights. People fought and died for decent wages and fought the National Guard when trying to establish labor unions. People marched and burned down buildings for poverty programs. Students sat in and engaged in other activities to stop napalm shipments to Vietnam. Then, in the late 60s, the government refusal to meet people's needs brought about the riots inside the black ghettos and the Chicano moratorium in the Southwest. The government's response to the uprisings in the late 60s was to establish projects like urban renewal. These type of projects did nothing but buy off a small fraction of people in the oppressed Indian, Black, Chicano nations. There were also some poverty programs set up, which Nixon has recently proposed be slashed out of the federal budget. People are refusing to allow the government to cut off the few programs that funnel some money to the poor. Therefore, people of all nations and color inside the U.S. have begun to organize to stop the cutbacks. Wherever the government has made it hard for people to live, there has been a response, like the hijacking of meat trucks or the consumer boycotts against rising food prices. U.S. stealing Indian land. Indian people have been struggling to maintain their way of life and possession of their land ever since the first white man set foot in the Western Hemisphere. Big corporate interests want to get their hands on the 55 million acres of land that Indian people still legally own. This land has water, minerals, timber, and grazing land that is largely unpolluted and unspoiled at this time. Remember, this was 1970s. The truth is that on a few reservations today, are tribal leaderships fully accountable or responsive to the people? Few Hopis knew about the leases to strip mine Black Mesa, or even today can find out what happened to the lease money paid to the tribe by the Peabody Coal Company. And the laws governing the Indians are still such that the people of few tribes possess the legal or political powers to throw out the thieves or reform their systems of government. Yet, when they complain to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they are told with utter hypocrisy that because of the Indians' wish for self-determination, the government will no longer interfere with internal tribal matters. The result of this and of a number of allied developments has been the growth of opposition by Indian people against the reservation power establishments whose numbers are termed Uncle Tomahawks or apples, red on the outside and white on the inside, because they are viewed as tools of the white interests and betrayers of their own people. U.S. divide and conquer tactics. For many years, the U.S. government has ruled this country by dividing the people and pitting them against one another. Indians, Chicanos, blacks, Asians, poor whites have been taught to fear and hate each other. Men from this country were sent to Vietnam to kill their Asian brothers and sisters for the profit of the rich. All of our poor energies have been spent fighting among ourselves while the government sits back and makes money off of us, denies us our cultures, rips off our lands, and uses us. One of the more important events of the Oglala Nation's short history and also of the revolutionary government is the revolutionary movement, is the building of the strong unity between the red man and the brown man's struggles. These struggles are not to be separated, and the common history and bonds should be brought out more strongly at this time. In other words, the Chicanos in this country, the nation of Heartland, must always relate to and support the struggles of the Indian people and accept the fact that Chicano people came from the Indian race. This is the unity of the Chicanos and Indians inside of Wounded Knee. The independent Oglala Sioux Nation has challenged the government's rule of divide and conquer. The four directions have come together there and are building a nation. Key to U.S. rule over our lives is the government's freedom to exploit us and make us depend upon their exploitation. As Russell Means, an AIM leader, said, the government has awarded people for being dependent upon it. The Bureau of Indian Affairs was set up to take care of the needs and problems of the Native American. It has, in fact, aided the government in breaking treaties, bolstering corrupt tribal council governments, and stealing money from Indian families. It does give crumbs to the Indian people, and for the sake of survival, people become dependent upon these crumbs. The same situation exists for families dependent upon the welfare system or on low wages. We are forced to accept crumbs and minimal programs from the government until we have the mass movement and courage to say to the U.S. government that we no longer will allow our lives to be controlled. The Oglala Sioux have done this and are showing other oppressed nations of people and oppressed lower classes of the U.S. how to fight for freedom. There are many of us who still live under control of the U.S. government on reservations of barrios, ghettos, and rural poverty areas. In the past, we have looked at each other's struggles as separate and foreign, and many times have failed to support one another. The one thing we must all understand is there will be no freedom for anyone in this country until the American Indian is free and until all oppressed nations in the U.S. are free. White people's role in the American Revolution is to support the national liberation struggle by any means necessary. It is in the interest of white people who are also oppressed by the same enemy to support those most oppressed by our enemy. By building alliances, white people help create the opportunity to rid us all of the rich who profit from our poverty and our labor. It is time for us to understand. I feel like they're talking to us right now from 1973. It is time for us to understand each other's cultures and to communicate. It is time for us to support each other in struggles, knowing that together we can win. If we create many wounded knees, we will be able to take the U.S. military pressure off the brothers and sisters inside of the new independent Oglala Sioux Nation.